Beautiful day out.
Yeah. Councillor Chilton, I don't believe we've met, but I'm Abby Russell with MFA. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Abby.
And I'm Seth Otto, also with MFA.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hi, Seth.
Councillor Chilton, I don't believe we've met, but I'm Abby Russell with MFA. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Abby.
Good to see you, Seth.
Somebody's got a delay.
Nope, that's me setting up YouTube.
Oh, okay.
It's on a 5-second delay. So
I mean, can you bleep us if we say bad words?
no.
How come I'm still, I thought we changed that counselor elect.
It shows that every time.
Patrick, I have to go in and change yours every time. So
I wonder why is that?
It should be connected to whatever login you're using.
That I'm using? Okay, I'll look
So you will
into it.
need to change, you would have to change your username on your Zoom account.
Okay.
I know when I go to work meetings, I have to switch it back. I'm like, wait, I'm not Councillor Chilton.
Okay, because I've used, all right, I'll look at it. All right.
I am very used to quickly changing names as fast as I can as the moderator. So.
All right, thank you.
It's common
Beat me to
practice.
it, Matt.
So. Okay. I think I don't know that I've met everybody on the team, but I think you're familiar to me from previous presentations you've made before the council, I think. Anyway, hi.
Meet you, Councillor Burkle.
Berkeley.
With the names. There we go.
There we
There
go.
you go.
He should have a hyphen above his E.
My uncle, who was a politician who had aspirations for state government, he put a little thing above it.
Yeah.
And he added a Y. I did do that in high school for a while, but everybody saw Berkeley. So I am who I am.
Is it an accent agave or a goo or whatever the...
All right, Mayor, we are live on YouTube and recording now. So.
Okay, well, call to order this council public forum, Wednesday, April 21st. Time is 6 p.m. The topic is to update the waterfront redevelopment, particularly the Central Waterfront. If you're not familiar with that, it's the repurposing of our waste pond. And I guess let's go ahead and do an introductions. I am Mayor Scholl. Councilors, Council President Morton.
Councilor President Morton, hello and welcome.
Council Berkeley.
Hi.
You guys, just jump in there, you guys.
Okay, Councilor Berkeley, started my first term in January.
Councillor
Steve
Chilton, and I also
Topaz.
started. Oh, sorry.
Your turn first, Jessica.
Well, I started in January also. So, yes.
Okay. And then I'll allow the Mall Foster folks to introduce themselves.
All right, well, I believe I'm going to actually start and then head down the list there, yes?
We had somewhat choreographed this presentation.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You did. Oh,
You're
I
hijacking it, Mayor.
like it. I'm messing
All right.
with your program.
So
From the city's point of view, we can't forget Mohammed.
Oh, I'll get there. I'll get there.
Mayor.
All right. So my name is Michelle Damus, and I'm actually a newer resident to St. Helens, almost a year and a half now. And I was asked to help be a special guest and to help moderate this evening, which I'm very pleased to do. I love it here so much. We're so excited. And I am the local president of SAG-AFTRA for Oregon and Southwest Washington. And SAG-AFTRA is the Screen Actors Guild and American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. So I do a lot of things. I'm an actress and a stunt performer, and I'm also a fitness professional. So I teach classes and see clients and all that. So I moved up here and wanted to get involved. And so I've met some amazing people. I've been so impressed. And I'm so excited about what the future looks like and the plans. And just, I lived in Tiger previously for 15 years, hardly knew a soul, moved out here, and I feel like I know half the town, even during a pandemic. So I love it here so much. And kudos to everyone who's been holding the city together and doing a great job. And I'm excited to be part of the future. So thank you so much to the residents that joined us this evening, as well as the council. We have tonight John Walsh, City Administrator for the City of St. Helens, Mohammed Zahir, Public Works Director, City of St. Helens, Rachel Berry, Government Affairs Specialist, City of St. Helens, Seth Otto, Senior Planner from Mall, Foster, and Alongi, as well as Abby is here with him as well. So with that said, some of our meeting ground rules. Participants are automatically muted when you enter the meeting. Please remain muted unless speaking to preserve sound quality. And the City of St. Helens public meetings are a safe space for all perspectives. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be allowed. There will be ample time for Q&A. We have made sure of that. So please reserve your questions for those portions of the meeting. To ensure everyone has a chance to be heard, we'll be using the hand raise function featured on Zoom. And so once that happens, you'll be able to go off mute and ask your question aloud. Or you can ask your questions in the Q&A chat box. And with that, we will go ahead and, see, everything I said is coming up on screen. There we go. So if I said it all too fast, now you can hear. So I am going to pass it off to John Walsh to start our evening talking about the St. Helens Riverfront, the Riverfront District, and the St. Helens Industrial Business Park. John and Mohammed will be covering these topics for us. So take it away, gentlemen.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Hopefully you can see the map up here on the screen there well enough and Zoom doesn't block it out completely for us, sir. So we're here to talk mostly about the Central Waterfront, which is the red property in the middle, but I think it's really important to look at the grand context of all of the riverfront properties together that we're working on. When we say the city's Riverfront Development Project, it's really a series of projects that all kind of have connectivity from the north to the south and along the water. And it's about almost 2 miles of waterfront if you include the ports portion there. So at the very top is in the green is the current veneer property. And tonight's presentation, I'm going to frame it as a sandwich of sorts where we have the veneer property as one piece of bread, the industrial park as the other, and then the Central Waterfront being kind of the meat. And the way purpose of doing that is that we've made a pretty good level of advancements on both the veneer property and the St. Helens Industrial Park. The meat is something we've been working on equally as hard, but it has kind of been funding dependent, kind of moved along by its components, and it's as you can see, it offers an opportunity to tie the whole redeveloped project together there. So on the veneer property, you'll notice that it is a natural extension of downtown. We've done a tremendous amount of community-based planning work. There's 2 projects currently going on, the Riverwalk component where the Riverwalk extends from the top of the docks and goes southward along the project for several hundred feet in the first phase, and then as a full design and construction project, and then the remaining terminus all the way down to Frogmore Slough where it hits a rail trestle that would cross over there. That's the phase 2 portion of that project. And at the same time, we're also looking at a project that extends the transportation system through that site. And that would be the first street from continuing southward towards Plymouth. And then the Strand, which is currently along the waterfront, will connect back to the riverfront. And we've had technical advisory group meetings on both of those projects, kickoff meetings for those. Those projects are underway. The financing is underway for all those improvements. And really had a great conversation this morning on the streets portion today, and I'm And I'll talk about that. And then we're going to go to the industrial park, where the industrial park, I'll give that an introduction. Mohammed's going to come in on the veneer property as far as talking about infrastructure on the veneer property, and then and also on the St. Helens Industrial Business Park. The yellow you see is a former industrial business park, or former Boise White paper mill, excuse me, that the city has acquired over the past 5 years, 6 years. And we've been working diligently to kind of redefine our future and have a more diversified economy where we don't have just a paper mill. Paper mills have done a lot for this community, but it also kind of left us high and dry when it wound down and left. So we're looking at a more sustainable, diverse future with that property. And we've done a fair amount of work, and we'll show you that in a minute.
It just did something, I don't know what.
And the orange property is kind of a bonus to this project. It's not a city controlled project, but it does adjacent to the Port of Columbia property that has some opportunity there. So Mohammed, if you want to advance the next slide, I'll have Mohammed.
Yeah. Thank you, John. You pretty much said all the good stuff. I mean, I'm not sure what you're looking here to add to this great introduction. Thank you. So, council members, Mr. Mayor, and looking at these projects, I think this couldn't be a better time for the city of St. Helens to explore the future, really. These projects, and if you look at any of these three properties, Mr. Walsh talked about the size of these, the acreage of between 22 and 50 and 205 acres between the St. Helens Industrial Park, the Central Waterfront property, and the Riverfront district. From an infrastructure point of view, this is an investment in the public and the city of St. Helens to improve the overall health and livability as we move into the future. This will also have a major positive impact in improving the quality of life and the environment as well, in addition to all the economical benefits that comes out of these major projects and investment. And finally, another point I would say it will be great as we move into these projects is the improvement of the city roads and the residents' quality of life as we connect these three projects going on simultaneously together. So the two projects are mainly we're working on now, at least in coordination with the administration team between John, Jenny, and myself and Sue. The Riverwalk and Park Extension project, that's one of them where we start the TAC meeting. As mentioned, we have presence of some of the councils on those going to be rotating through these projects, and the roadway and utility infrastructure projects. So these two projects will improve also the privately and publicly owned water lines as we move into development and what we see the path forward. We will have a lot of also major impacts on the facilities, businesses, city lighting in downtown, stormwater and sewer systems. All that will be kind of part of that positive improvement as we improve in most of these infrastructure aspects of these projects. And finally, other pieces that will be playing along is a complex project that spans across all areas within the city of St. Helens, and this also will be improving the connectivity for our parks and trail systems, especially in the Plymouth Street connectivity as we extend the road and utilities on First and Strand Streets. So just a little bit of those positive impact on the infrastructure piece of these projects as we move forward. John, you want to go?
Probably be noted that what you see on this map today is a concept rendering, and part of the consultant's work is to take a look at that alignment of the roads, both of the First Street distance to the bluff, more towards the water, and also really looking closely at Strand to see if that's the right alignment to come back and connect to Tualatin there. So we do have a framework plan that kind of guides this document, but the consultants are taking just a big broad look overall, and so yeah, the reality is it'll probably be close to something like this, but may not be exactly that. So concerns about be able to public parking, the parking for the uses that are going to be there, the whether or not the street's a complete street on both sides, so there's buildings on both sides of the street or just one, are all things that we're going to be looking at real closely over the next few months here. So.
Great. You want to go to the next slide, Matt?
It's actually Abby that is controlling the presentation.
Oh, Abby, sorry.
So
Sorry
here's
to
a,
be stubborn, but it should be up now.
okay, thank you, Abby. That's so there's a little different perspective. This from the south looking north isometric there. This is the mill, just the former mill site. A lot of that's been demolished. Now it's home to Cascades Tissue and another tenant on the mill site there. And this site offers a lot of extra acreage for redevelopment. We have a number of tools at our disposal to attract development and improve that diversified economy. Some of those are the urban renewal district we formed over the last few years and amended and have it on a good path now. And there's also the enterprise zone, which is a tax abatement zone, and then the opportunity zone, which is a federally designated opportunity zone. And that's based off a census tract that gives investors basically tax breaks for investing in these areas. So.
Great. To add into that, John, so that also benefits from the infrastructure, as I said. I like to look at it from an infrastructure and utility kind of projects where we combine all these projects simultaneously and we're working towards all these great benefits to the city of St. Helens. We're looking at a category, what you call the economic diversification. This area would really help the vitality and provide more stable path and equitable growth opportunities and development as we find more of these opportunities into these projects. As you see, the acreage and again the space is amazing, and it's like a crown jewel of the city that's going to have a lot of positive impacts on generations to come. Also, what I really like about these projects and the diversity that brings to the kind of approach we're taking into these projects, it's more important now in the wake of a slowing global growth. As you guys know, with the global pandemic that hits, this is a great time to kind of focus on this economical benefits and the imperative to increase the number of quality jobs as we move forward to replace these that we lost through having one single industry, which is the mill in the past of the city. So really the future is really bright, and I think there is just the impact will be felt as we move forward and we start executing these projects slowly here, and we have tons in the works. Thank you. We can go, Abby, to the next slide, please. So John, you want to talk briefly about just the phases, and I can also add a little bit to that if you'd
Sure.
like.
This is the city's adopted plan for the industrial business park. This is a parcelization plan that defines the road rights of way, the access to all the sub parcels on the mill site there. And also, if you follow the green line all the way down to the port property, there's a high level of interest to another 30 acres of property. That's Riverfront right there. We've done in concert with this project, we've done a infrastructure financing plan to know how much the infrastructure is going to cost for this. So we move in a stepwise fashion to, start beginning with phase one and moving to phase two, and then onward throughout the site to have some, do the easy development first, or the upfront pieces first. And we've been pursuing funding based off this plan. This plan has been an important tool to use to try to attract state and federal funds for this. We talked about that earlier in our council meeting today under our legislative report. So, but infrastructure is a huge component to making it. Right now, the property is largely unusable for smaller development uses.
And I have to add to that, John. So I see, Mr. Mayor, council members, see here the vision of the city and the leadership have started into this overall project in the past, and now it's time to really execute. And we are being very methodical about the approach, looking at it at least from the experience I bring to the city from a project management and business approach. And these phases you see in this slide, they are methodically planned based on priorities and in coordination with other projects that we're working on. And this is how kind of see the phase approach, which is the most proper as we move forward and we secure funding and resources in order to move with this kind of scale of projects and the impact moving forward. And also the benefits of this overall infrastructure project, as you see in top of the one we've mentioned already, the economical growth and the suitability, sustainability. This will also give instant credibility to business owners who's going to be joining the city or going to move in the city. Like, for example, looking at new residents. Michelle coming in and have this very positive impact already and feel welcome and see these opportunities of growth is immense to the growth of the city and the success of these projects. This will also have a great presence for the local community. And the greater convenience will provide convenience and flexibility to everybody who lives and is going to be welcome in the future to the city. And finally, will revitalize job opportunities because these projects will require resources that are going to bring a lot of economical benefits as we move into the future. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move into the Central Waterfront project, and this is the meat of the topic here. And you can see how the near property is separated from the industrial business park by way of this wastewater lagoon that's just vastly oversized. It's a 50-acre property. The lagoon's obviously smaller than that. It's about a little around closer to 40 acres. But a very important piece of property. And I'm going to turn it over to Seth Otto at Mo Foster to kind of lead us through where we've been and where we're going here.
Great, thanks, John, and thanks, Michelle, for the introduction. I'll expand on that a little bit. Mo Foster Longi, many of you know us. We've been working with the city really, I think, since at least 2013. And this is one of many projects that I've had the great privilege of being involved in. And that includes the framework planning for the veneer site and the due diligence, assessment, and analysis of acquisition of all these waterfront properties when the city did take them over from various different Boise entities. Tonight, focusing on what we're calling the Central Waterfront, we'll give a high-level overview of the work that's been done to date, what we're looking at and why, and where we expect to go next. I'll talk for maybe 10 minutes, and then we're going to have a longer Q&A period in which I can hopefully provide some more detailed responses to your questions. So, again, the Central Waterfront includes the wastewater treatment lagoon and the large former pulp treatment lagoon that it surrounds it to the south. We also include the waterfront area and the dike that holds back the water within the lagoon. That's generally what we're considering of as the Central Waterfront area. It's 50 acres total, 39 of which are the lagoon itself. The lagoon was constructed as part of the former Boise Cascade pulp mill. Processed their water byproduct, very water intensive use historically, although less so now. Cascade tissue now operates without the need to process that industrial byproduct through the lagoon. So it essentially sits there being aerated, as you can see in this satellite image, and helping to process the city's wastewater, which, if you see the northernmost circular area, is about what the city needs to process its sewage. So it's just a vastly oversized lagoon for the purposes of city municipal needs. So starting in about 2018, around the time that we were finalizing the veneer site redevelopment framework plan, and the city was entertaining options to evaluate redevelopment of the industrial business park to the south. It became clear that, as John was alluding to, this middle piece of the sandwich needed some attention. And so a concept was developed that it, rather than being a pure liability and a challenge, it presented actually kind of an interesting opportunity. An opportunity to deal both with the city's obligation to manage the material that's in the lagoon, but also then to help with various maintenance dredging and cleanup dredging within the waterways surrounding the city. So the Multnomah Channel, Columbia River, Lower Willamette, all requiring navigation, maintenance, dredging, and much of that material requiring a place to go that's upland, that's not in the water. Most of that material cannot be put back into the water. So Corps of Engineers, various Lower Columbia ports, all looking for places to store that material. And so you have kind of an alignment of interests here with a city that has a space it needs to fill and various entities with material that they need to place somewhere. And so the concept was the dream was born. Why not consider repurposing the lagoon to be an upland disposal facility, at the same time filling in a lagoon that again is vastly oversized and frankly a bit of a blight in this part of the community, and potentially creating new land, reusable land. This is not uncommon. There are many locations throughout the Pacific Northwest where land has been filled in with sediment, dredged sediment material and repurposed into any kind of a beneficial use. So what we've been doing in our analysis here is to look at this concept from a fatal flaw standpoint. So we've done natural resource analysis, geotechnical, geological and hydrogeological analysis on a baseline level to understand what are the conditions here underlying the lagoon. And for the most part, it sits on basalt, which is a fairly stable material. There is sand and sediment on top of that, and there are ways to manage that material to mitigate any potential risks. And that's what the next phase of work is really focused on. So kind of have a baseline condition of what's in the lagoon and what's underlaying it. But when you put to test a design for an upland storage facility, there are questions that arise around seismic stability, management, and potential pathways for air or water pollution. And so that's the area that we're evaluating or potentially going to evaluate in future steps as funding becomes available. Up to this point, the project has been funded in a partnership with the City of St. Helens, the State of Oregon, and various departments within the State of Oregon. So the Governor's Office, Department of Environmental Quality, and Business Oregon have all contributed to this concept and have taken the project as far as it is so far. And next steps will require additional funding, and we understand that there are potentially sources of funding going to be made available through the federal government, and this could potentially be a project that meets a number of checks a number of boxes, let's say, for the American Recovery Plan and potentially future infrastructure funding coming down from the federal government. It's a high-profile catalytic project that brings a lot of benefit both to the community and to the region. And so there certainly is more work to be done, but the outcome is potentially great for the community. So if we advance to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about where we are or where we're going next. So the work to date is essentially an early phase baseline existing conditions analysis. What do we know about the site and what are some of the data gaps that are there? The next step would be to finalize a conceptual design, something that would be sufficient enough to test the concept against what we know about the existing conditions. So can the bedrock and sediment and sand support the level of material that would be imported in here, and what engineering and environmental controls would need to be in place to ensure that it's safe. That's the primary question here. Once that's proven, move into a serious design development. So taking it to a much more detailed level of design and engaging with the agencies that would provide permits to approve the use of this property. This includes primarily DEQ as a it would be classified as an upland waste storage facility. So that's under DEQ's purview, but there are multiple agencies that could have purview over this, and we believe that could take a significant amount of time potentially to get through that. Working back from a deadline of about 2025, when we understand there's going to be a significant uptick in the need to store and place maintenance dredge material in particular, we believe the design and the permitting needs to proceed apace here over the next essentially 4 years. So 60% design, detailed design in 2022, 2023, and then really moving into closing out the permitting 23, 24, and developing that final design and preparing a plan for operations and maintenance of the facility. During that time, of course, there's a lot of other work around engaging with the community, making sure that this project is transparent and accessible to the community to understand what exactly is being proposed, what trade-offs and what benefits are being made for the city, working with other governmental agencies in the region to ensure success, and of course testing the concept all along to ensure that the assumptions that have been made up to this point still bear out as we proceed forward. And as I said earlier, we have up to this point completed preliminary analyses that show quite a bit of benefit to the community, both in terms of reclaiming the waterfront physically, creating new land essentially, but also from a financial standpoint, the tipping fees that we assume in a conservative sense would generate, the tipping fees are what you charge per load of material. Those would generate significant amount of financial benefit for the city, ranging in a general range right now in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 million net present value for the city. So it could be a huge boon. It could contribute a lot to a lot of the improvements, creating amenities, and it would also potentially, as a side benefit, upgrade the city's wastewater treatment plant. So just conceptually, again, what are we talking about? What does this look like for the community, let's say 20, 25 years down the road, maybe? Next slide would be an area where a lot of the community amenities that we've heard citizens of St. Helens are really excited about and feel would help increase livability in the community could potentially be located. So a destination sports complex, community gathering space such as an amphitheater, potentially some multifamily housing, as well as a great deal of open space, even access to the river through a beach along the waterfront, along the riverfront there. And it's cut off here in the image, but certainly there's access potential for an additional marina and moorage space as well. It's potentially 50 acres of brand new land, and that doesn't happen very much in our day and age. So I'll wrap up with that, and then as I said, we're here for questions, and I hope you have some, and I'm happy to field those.
All right. So for those of you who possibly logged on after we had talked about our protocols for this evening, so there are a couple ways that you can ask questions. You can use the raised hand function, and on your screen at the bottom, you should be able to see possibly under reactions. Oh, there's a raised hand right there. Or depending on what your device is, you may have some other way to raise your hand. Also, you can input into the chat. You could ask your question verbally if you did not, or by writing it, if you do not want to speak. And then I guess if all else fails, if someone can't do either, we'll figure that out. So it looks like we have one hand popped up. Councilor Chilton, please.
Thank you. Okay, so, well, first of all, I want to say that I walked the property with John Walsh, and he kind of already gave me elaborated a little bit on this plan, and I'm definitely in support of it, and I see the potential, and I'm really excited about that. And the thing that I have to come back to, because I'm going to be asked, is funding, So I heard you make note of the American Recovery Plan. Did you mean the American Rescue Plan? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So was that the only funding source that you mentioned? I'm sorry, I kind of jumped over to my email from John Walsh to review that. So I may have missed other things you mentioned.
So that the ARP, I understand will bring 2.6 billion to the state of Oregon. That'll be allocated down to each local municipality based on population size. I think St. Helens is getting in the neighborhood of 2.8 million.
Yeah.
And I know there's a list of capital improvement projects, absolutely, that are high priority for the community. So I don't pretend to assume that this is where the money needs to be spent. I think it presents a unique opportunity, and the timing is important on this project. I will say that. And I think with some of that funding, there's a great deal that could be advanced here. I'll just say that.
Okay.
And I know that there's a lot of different considerations about what gets funded and prioritized. And then I did mention a potential infrastructure plan, which is still in the works in federal government, but would potentially bring, I think the number is in the trillions nationally. So assuming that it's allocated out in a similar way that the ARP has been, could bring, again, significant resources to the state and to the region.
Can I jump in? I don't have a hand.
Thank you, Seth.
Can I jump in?
If Councilor Tabaz, if you don't, I'd like to finish Councilor Chilton's question. And this project is very much contingent, progress is very much contingent on funding. And we've been looking at all kinds of, appropriation requests. And we're actually even on the agenda tonight, there's a request for funding from FEMA to look at certain aspects of the project. So we're looking everywhere besides local resources to move this, because it is a project that's of regional significance. It's good, it's beneficial for the city and the entire region to have a place to deposit these materials. So that's why we've garnered some interest from some of our partners, and we're continuing to explore that as well. So.
Thank
Can
you,
I
John.
jump in now?
And hold on, Councilor
Okay.
Tabaz. And so I just wanted to say on that note, I'm not like ruling it out in my mind, but I just want to make sure that it's very clear that that's, that is the funding stream that we're potentially looking at, which is basically the stimulus to the government stimulus to our community. So I just want everyone to, think about that, because it's something that the community is going to ask about. So yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Topaz, go ahead,
Okay.
please.
I've read your report where you drilled a bunch of core holes around and made some investigations around the lagoon. And there's a couple of very disturbing things about that. The other thing also in the report, I think it was Appendix H, Mole Forster recommended that no fill be above the level because the ability to build a stable foundation really didn't exist. Now I'm going to talk about some of the core hole information. Information from the bottom of the core hole was pH, oxygen, turbidity, and temperature. One of the strange things about all the holes is the temperature was 10 to 15 degrees above ground temperature. And the temperature underneath the ground, and this is 50 to 80 yards even further away from the water, was hotter than the hot water in that cooling lagoon. As you know, there's a membrane, because this used to be Frogmore Slough, where the water level was at the level of the river. Now, the water level now is 25 feet higher than the river. So there's a huge amount of heat being generated from biomass or something underneath what's presently there, to the point where it's heating up or hotter than the water. Now, most of the holes, you went a few feet in dirt and then 200 feet in basalt. There's a couple of spots that you went 200 feet and didn't hit anything except dirt and some biologic material, basically trees. And that's where the Dagami maps show this landslide problem. I mean, it's an amazing piece of geology. The other thing that was interesting is we had a cave-in at the north end of this lagoon when you were drilling cores, and basically there's an old storm water line. It's also an overflow line for the lagoon, and a 36-inch pipe where it joins a 48-inch pipe collapsed, and you could see the old fill-in. The thing that was most disturbing, the groundwater around the pipe in the middle of August was quite heavy. And if we've got groundwater flowing under this thing and it was coming out of the basalt, we have another problem. So that's there's a disaster map or pollution map that shows the Multnomah Channel from coming out of the Portland Harbor all the way up to the Frogmore Slough, and includes the whole front of this place. That shows that there's a pollution problem, and I think this map is dated 20-some years ago. The other thing that's the aerial view you saw was I think it's in the southwest corner, was a big clarifier, a big round tank that's sinking. In fact, there's a bad angle to it. So the ground along the riverfront is unstable. The Army Corps will fill this in for free, which doesn't make you any money. But if we have to put in unloading equipment, who pays for the unloading and the dewatering equipment? And the picture shows no, when you show the ball field, there was no sewer treatment plant. Right now, we collect the sewer, we sterilize it, basically, we dilute it with the hot water and dump it into the river. As I believe the federal government's going to make sure that what we dump in the river's got to be clean, not diluted. Where do we put that sewer plant in your plans? But I have real problems with the fact that the ground underneath this is unstable. The depth of water underneath the river depth, I don't know if anybody's plotted that. So building on top of this, and also, well, back to the pollution underneath it, when we put the membrane down in the 60s, the gas generated by the bioload underneath the Frogmore Slough floated that membrane up, and it had to be breached. So what's been in the cooling pond and the sewer plant has been polluting what's ever underneath there for how many feet, whether it's 50, 100, or whatever. There's some serious problems straight down, and your cores did not go underneath the lagoon. They went in the periphery, which is hot. I mean, as I say, 10 to 15 degrees hotter than the cooling pond was. So there's a problem there underneath ground. How do you propose to take care of that? And that's all from your report, by the way.
Well, I'll tell you, Councilor Topaz, I really appreciate how closely you're reading our work. That we really appreciate that. And I will say, I'm not sure I can answer all of these tonight. What would be really helpful is if you could present us with a letter with these questions. Email's fine. We could set up another phone call or meeting. There's a lot to unpack there.
Oh, it's easy. I've already sent a critique of this to the DEQ. I'll send you a copy. It's a fairly large report.
Thank you. I don't know that we've received that yet. So there are a lot of questions, a lot of things to unpack there. There are a lot of questions about what's underlaying the lagoon. That's for sure. We don't know everything. There are areas where we didn't hit bedrock. That's true. There are areas where there are questions about the stability of the underlying material. That's absolutely true. And that's why, if this is a concept that the city is interested in pursuing, the additional studies would help answer those questions. I mean, I think that's kind of the basic answer here. There's lot we don't know, but what we have looked at so far has not proven to be what we call a fatal flaw, at least from the standpoint of testing the concept at this point. What we've seen is that there is actually some viability here for this, and it's worth considering to look at where exactly bedrock is under the full lagoon, the condition of the liner. There are multiple questions like that. And again, if you can share your letter to DEQ with us, we can help provide a response. I think that may be the best way to pursue.
Do you realize that the levee once failed, was breached?
I'm not personally aware of that, no.
Okay, what happened someplace in the 70s, I ran into some of the people that put it back together again. That's, so that it's been breached because of a heavy storm water.
Oh, and I did make a note here, the sewer plant, assuming that would be relocated somewhere. That's
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Matt or Abby, do we have any questions in the written queue? And if not, then we'll go to Councilor Berkeley.
You have no questions in the chat.
Great, thank you. Councilor Berkeley, please.
Thank you, and thanks for making sure to check in if we had folks trying to inquire through the chat. I just a few simple questions. One, in the timeline, when it speaks about the final conceptual design, I think in my mind, and perhaps it might be in public's mind, when we talk about design, we do see the fields, the ball fields, et cetera, that are on top of the potential fill. I think I heard that that's 20 to 25 years in the future before anything actually goes on top of that. So that what you're referring to in your report here, the conceptual design has to do with the design of the facility or the process of bringing the fill in and what would all be involved with that. And then as well as needing to make sure that the site is appropriate, can hold the material that we might possibly be bringing in. Is that right then?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Councilor. That's an important point.
Yeah, and I know we look at things, and I'm very visual, and so it helps to see that. So that again, any decision the city makes about what actually, if we go ahead with the fill, then any decision that the city makes about what goes on top of the fill, that's still years down the future, in the city, the council. I'm sure I won't be on it 20 years from now. That'll be for other folks to be decide. I do think one issue that's perhaps the one that I hear most often asked by residents is the nature of the material that's being brought in. And from what I've read, I am assured that we're not bringing in toxic waste, but I think we do know, and we hear people throwing that term around, and it is of a major concern to a number of people. Again, from what I understand of this project, as I, even before being on the council, have understood that the city has been doing its diligence to ensure that whatever we bring in is not toxic waste. But yet, can you explain a little bit more about what the nature of the fill is in terms of what it might have in terms of other types of materials? What are we talking about that is actually going to physically be brought up?
Sure. So what we've identified as the primary sources of fill would come from maintenance dredging of the Columbia River, the Multnomah Channel, and the Lower Willamette. Some of that what comes from the Willamette may contain materials that are impacted by industrial uses there, but that's true up and down the Columbia. Anything that would be screened and deemed toxic or hazardous is collected separately and sent to a controlled landfill in Arlington, barged up the river. So what we're talking about is material that is below that screening level for hazardous material. And there's a lot of it. Frankly, there's a huge backlog of dredging, channel dredging, particularly in the Willamette as well as the Columbia, and even in the channel as well. And there will be a demand for a place to put it. And so it's just good economic sense in that way to look at this. Generally speaking, the risk pathways for contaminants contained in river sediment are through consumption of organisms, essentially up the food chain, from microorganisms that consume these contaminants to the bigger things that eat them, and the fish ultimately that eat those things, and then humans eating those fish. That's the pathway here. And then there's toxins in the fish that are cancer causing. It's not, generally they're not airborne, right? The definition of sediment is wet soil material. So this material would remain in that condition and then would be contained within an enclosed facility.
Okay, thank you. I have some other questions. I can do those email or some other way, but so thank you very much. I see other people have their hands raised.
Thank you. We have Art with his hand up, and it looks like he probably will just be via the phone.
Yes, good afternoon. Confirming that I'm being heard?
You are. Please go ahead. Thank you.
You. Been sitting here listening. I've got a few bullets I'm going to run through here just real quick. And I think I've had discussions with a number of you previously regarding some of the concerns we have about this project. But if it's a landfill, it will always be a landfill. It will always be a liability. You talk about income, finances, and all these kind of things. We're not going to have really use of that property for at least minimum of 20 years, no control over what's coming in or timeframes. But would like to see, and I've asked for this previously, the alternatives that you've looked at in regard to use of that property and how to clean it up. In particular, I've been told we're going to have to clean it up, remove those contaminated sediments, line it, and then we put those contaminated sediments back in on top. So my question is, if we're going to clean it up to begin with, why not open that slough up, Frogmore Slough, turn it into marina? You'll have 20 to 30 acres of new protected waterfront for marinas, for floating homes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll start generating income, and I can crunch numbers, I've done it before, but millions of dollars in perpetuity versus the liability that toxic waste landfill, call it whatever you want to mention, but waste will not be toxic according to RCRA standards, but they are contaminated and they are a threat, and they need to go into a lined landfill, and it's going to be a little over a mile upstream from our drinking water intake. We can talk more about that at a later point, but that's a concern I haven't seen in any of your reports that has been done over the number of years. I think the reports are biased with an end result in mind. And a lot of it, again, we've been told if you see something odd, say something about it. Well, follow the money. One of the biggest benefits for this project, it's not really for the city of St. Helens, it's for the state of Oregon, and it's for the city of Portland. And a lot of the money, huge amount of it, funding these studies has come from those sources. At least $500,000 was funneled directly from the Division of State Lands to Mal Foster to produce these reports. So I want to cut to the chase here. So I think the studies are biased. There's no guarantees on what's going to happen. The waste out there, again, is contaminated waste. And one of the things I'm really kind of disturbed about, a year ago in July, front page news, the city was excited about having a new company come to town and make good use of our waterfront. And it was a company that was going to moor dredges and tugboats. And the permits was in state lands, was ready to issue the authorization to allow the use change. And come to find out, they were unaware that this moorage area was right in the middle of the most contaminated sediments on St. Helens waterfront, not the lagoon, but in the river. And it was really quite disturbing. And I believe I informed city personnel, managers, and the counselors that this was going down, and nothing occurred. To do something like that, knowing that we have contaminated sediments on the waterfront, that your business opportunity for quick money was going to stir these sediments up and spread them back into the river, when we now have a fish advisory that extends from the Portland Harbor all the way down here to our edge of the island there. And there's been no mention about notices to the public or cautionary concerns as far as people fishing out there, that we have these contaminated fish that are, we have sediments out there that have higher contamination than a lot of the Portland Harbor sediments. So lots of, in my opinion, fatal flaws. And at least if they're not fatal flaws, the transparency is lacking. And there's been a definitely hand on the rudder directing this project to completion. And I'm seeing it now, and everything I've heard tonight, time is of the essence, because they're going to start dredging Portland Harbor, and we want to have this site ready for them when that time comes. Not comfortable with the path nor the pace that this project is taking. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Art, before someone answers, we are taking meeting minutes. Could I have your last name for the city recorder, please?
Certainly. First name's Arthur, middle initial F, Lesko, which is the last name, and it's spelled Leskowich, and I'm a citizen of St. Helens.
Thank you very much. All right. Whoever would like to answer, respond to Art.
You know, I'm happy to. I don't know that I heard a question in there per se, but I do appreciate your perspective, Art. And I guess, you know, if I can't convince you that this was not a unbiased report, scientifically prepared, the best I can offer you is that yes, it was. A lot of the funding did come from the state. And as a result, we had a very involved working group that included DEQ, Department of Fish and Wildlife, DSL, looking over the shoulders of our geologists and scientists and engineers throughout the entire process of preparing it. I believe they did that with the interests of the citizens of Oregon in mind and the use of our taxpayer dollars. But you know, that's I guess my perspective on how.
Yeah, and I tend to disagree with you, and I'd like you or the city to provide all those alternatives that apparently were studied, like you do with generally any kind of cleanup, from doing nothing at all to cleaning it up to 100+%, and those alternatives and cost benefits of those different levels and types of cleanup. And again, maybe the cost benefits of what a marina in that lagoon would generate versus $20-30 million. Your initial studies as far as the transportation cost that was done, what, 5-6 years ago? Again, can't agree with a lot of the assumptions that you made there. But your estimated profits were exaggerated much higher at that point. Now you're down to what, 20-30 million? 20-30 million means nothing in the big picture for the type of liability and the benefits that the city will receive. You know, and we're going to develop the veneer property, while for the next 20 years there's barges unloading nasty sludge from a Superfund site. That's the draw. Sorry, I'm done for today. And actually, I'll be putting together a number of written products, and actually all documents that you and the city have produced. So I'll be more than happy to share that with everybody. I'll put it into the file and send it out to whoever you'd like me to send it to. But I certainly would like a response to my question of all the alternatives that were looked at and the cost benefits versus turning it into a landfill. That's my question. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any questions in the chat box?
No questions in the chat box.
Okay, great, thank you. And no more hands up in the list do I see. So would we like to go back to the PowerPoint? I think there's a couple more pages on that. Or if anyone is still looking, searching for your, if you're searching for your hands up button, you can't find it, you can come off mute and speak up if you'd like. All right, going once, going twice. And do we have the city news and events PowerPoint that's coming up?
Yep. And this was mine. Hello, this is Rachel Barry with the City of St. Helens. Just wanted to point out our new website address, sthellensoregon.gov, and also direct folks to more information about these projects can be found under the Business and Development tab on our website. You'll see pages on each of these projects, as well as our strategic work plan. And council forums are going to become a monthly happening. So please see us every third Wednesday at 6 p.m. The next forum is Wednesday, May 18th from 6 to 7, and we'll be talking about the Riverwalk. With that, I want to thank everyone. And on the next slide, you'll see contact information for City Administrator and Mohammed Zahir, our wonderful new Public Works Director. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. And thank you all for attending and taking the time this evening.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank Michelle and Mal Foster and staff for the well put together presentation, and we will adjourn this council forum.